Open a modern atlas of historical Southeast Asia and Majapahit may appear as one enormous block of color. The image is memorable, but it can make the 14th century world look like a modern nation-state with fixed borders and uniform administration. Majapahit was unquestionably powerful. Its court in East Java gathered rice, labor, prestige and trade, while its name became central to Indonesian historical memory. Yet power traveled through different relationships, direct administration close to the center, tribute and alliance farther away, commercial ties across the sea, and claims expressed in court literature. To understand Majapahit, we must leave the colored map and enter the city, the rice field, the port and the poem. Trowulan in East Java preserves the most extensive remains associated with Majapahit's capital. The site covers a broad landscape rather than one enclosed palace ruin. Archaeologists have identified red brick gateways, religious structures, settlement areas, industrial activity, canals, reservoirs, and thousands of artifacts. UNESCO's tentative listing describes an urban area roughly 11 by 9 kilometers, though the precise plan and chronology continue to be studied. This scale matters. A court could not function through monuments alone. It required homes, workshops, storage, water, roads, and fields. The buried city therefore changes the story from kings and battles to coordination, the daily movement of clay, grain, people and information through an organized landscape. Aerial survey and excavation reveal a network of canals and water structures across Trowulan. Some channels intersect in a broad grid, linked with reservoirs and ponds such as Segaran. Their exact functions were multiple and remain debated: drainage, irrigation, transport, water storage, flood control, and the symbolic ordering of space may all have mattered. What is certain is that water connected the court city to its agricultural foundation. East Java's volcanic soils could produce abundant rice, but harvests depended on labor and management. Stored grain fed specialists, officials, religious communities, and visitors. The capital's political strength was therefore grounded in ecological knowledge. Majapahit power began not at a distant frontier, but in the ability to organize water and food near home. Trowulan is famous for terracotta. Excavations have uncovered roof tiles, pipes, vessels, figurines, architectural ornaments, molds and domestic objects. These materials survive where timber houses and cloth have vanished. They show a city full of makers, potters preparing clay, builders firing bricks, metalworkers using ceramic molds, cooks storing water, children handling toys, and households maintaining spaces that rarely enter royal chronicles. Imported ceramics appear beside local production, evidence that trade and everyday life met in the same rooms. A capital is often reconstructed from ceremonial centers outward. Terracotta reverses the view. It begins with hands, surfaces, and repeated tasks, then asks how those ordinary acts sustained the spectacle of court. One major source is the Nagara Kretagama, composed in 1365 by Mpu Prapanka. The poem celebrates King Hyam Wuruk, court ritual, journeys, and a wide geography of places associated with Majapahit. It is extraordinarily valuable, but it is also court literature with a political purpose. Lists of regions express an ordered world centered on the ruler. They do not automatically prove that officials from Trowulan governed every named place directly. Historians compare the poem with inscriptions, archaeology, and other texts rather than reading it as a modern administrative register. This critical method does not diminish Majapahit. It replaces one dramatic but flat picture with a richer account of how courts represented power to themselves and others. The Prime Minister Gajah Mada is remembered for the Palapa Oath, a pledge linked with bringing regions of the archipelago into Majapahit's political sphere. Later generations made the story a powerful symbol of unity. But memory and historical administration are not identical. The oath belongs to a world of court ambition, warfare, diplomacy, and prestige. Its language cannot be converted without caution into modern national borders. Majapahit's expansion involved negotiation as well as coercion, and relationships could weaken when personalities or circumstances changed. Gajah Mada matters because the story reveals the scale of political imagination in 14th century Java, and because modern Indonesia later found in that imagination a language for connecting many islands. Majapahit centered on an agrarian heartland, but it was never only inland. Ports on Java's north coast connected rice, timber, textiles, and manufactured goods with the spice-producing islands and wider Asian commerce. Sailors moved according to seasonal winds. Merchants operated through networks of trust, credit, and multilingual brokerage. The court could benefit from those flows through taxation, protection, appointment, and alliance, even when it did not control every voyage. Foreign ceramics and coins found at Trowulan reveal the reach of exchange, while local objects show that imported goods were selected and used within Javanese life. Maritime influence was not a line drawn over water. It was a chain of ports, people, and recurring monsoon journeys. The word empire can be useful if it reminds us that Majapahit projected power beyond its core. It becomes misleading if it implies the same authority everywhere. Close to Trowulan, the court could draw on land, labor, and administrators. Elsewhere, a ruler might send tribute, join a marriage alliance, acknowledge ceremonial rank, negotiate trade, or resist. Coastal communities had their own interests, and sea distance limited continuous supervision. Relationships changed with succession, conflict, and opportunity. This layered model explains how Majapahit could be genuinely influential without operating like a modern centralized state. It also restores agency to communities that appear on court lists. They were participants in regional politics, not empty spaces waiting to be colored. Majapahit's political center weakened through the 15th century amid succession disputes, shifting trade, and the rise of new Islamic port polities. There was no single night when an entire civilization vanished. Communities continued, courts relocated, religious practices changed, and Javanese cultural forms traveled into new settings. Bali preserved and reworked many traditions associated with the Majapahit era, though simple stories of one complete migration should be treated cautiously. Archaeological sites were reused, remembered, and sometimes forgotten beneath later settlement. Decline is therefore better understood as transformation. Royal authority fragmented, but art, language, ritual, political vocabulary, and family memory remained available to be claimed by later societies. Return to the map, then let the single color dissolve. In its place, imagine canals crossing Trowulan, rice arriving at storehouses, terracotta cooling beside a kiln, officials listening to envoys, and ships waiting for the next wind. Majapahit's world was held together by unequal but changing relationships. Its influence was political, economic, ritual, and remembered, not one uniform system. The archaeological city gives us a map made of functions rather than borders: water, food, craft, ceremony, and exchange. That picture is less simple, but more powerful. Majapahit mattered because it organized connection across difference. The question is not how far one color reaches. It is how many people had to keep the network alive.